It's Red Eye Radio. Talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios. For Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, Dan Mandis, this is Red Eye Radio.
866-90 Red Eye is the phone number. 866-907-3339. It is the morning of December 27th. Yeah, we are back live on Red Eye Radio. Dan Mandis here in for Gary and Eric. Always appreciate the opportunity. You can find me on the socials at Dan Mandis Show. There's been a battle over visas going on within MAGA world. Over H-1B visas. It has all been playing out on X. Just a crazy, crazy day. So here's what's going on, because you have Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk and others, and they are trying to convince MAGA world that H-1B visas are a good thing. And MAGA world, as you can imagine, and we're going to go through all of this, Trump supporters are, there's no other way to say it. There's a lot of Trump supporters. They are absolutely PO'd. And they find that what Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk are saying about H-1B visas, that it is a complete violation of everything Donald Trump stands for. And so it's a really fascinating conversation going on. A lot of arguing, again, on X. Of course, you all know that X is owned by Elon Musk. So Donald Trump, it all began where Donald Trump appoints a guy named Sri Ramakrishnan as an AI policy advisor. Now, this guy is from India, and this is where the whole thing begins. He's worked at Microsoft. He worked at Twitter before it was X. He worked at Yahoo and Facebook. He worked with Elon Musk on rebuilding Twitter. And I would assume that old Sri Ramakrishnan also worked with Elon with freeing it from censorship. I mean, this guy Krishnan, he's one of us. He's a guy that is all about free speech. And he helped Elon Musk. And last time I checked, a lot of folks involved in the MAGA movement love Elon Musk. And this guy has been working with the tech industry for years. Yes, he is an American citizen. He's from India, but he became a citizen over a decade ago. And so Trump, he wants him to be part of his administration as an AI policy advisor. And he advocates for H-1B visas. Now, what is an H-1B visa, and why is this story really ticking off a lot of people who are supportive of Donald Trump? Well, an H-1B visa, it's a visa that, if you don't know, and I'm going to really simplify it, but it is a visa that allows employers here in America to employ foreign workers in specialty occupations. It requires specialized knowledge and a bachelor's degree or the equivalent work experience. You can stay for 3 years, extend to 6 years, and then you can reapply for your H-1B visa. So basically, if you own a company and you have a special A1 type program that you are, AI type program that you're rolling out, and there's a guy in India who knows all about that type of program, then you can hire him to come to America and help you roll it out. So basically, if you've got a tech company, a computer company, maybe it's an engineering company, whatever, and you want to bring somebody in from another country to work within your company, whether he's from India, whether he's from China, whatever it is, well, then you get him to apply for one of these H-1B visas, and he can come to America and he can work. Now, here's the problem, though. The problem is it's very controversial because a lot of these companies have been abusing the H-1B visa program for years, and we're going to get into it. But this is why folks within the MAGA movement, they're really angry, and yes, they even feel betrayed. They feel betrayed by Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk. So after the announcement that Donald Trump wanted this guy as an AI policy advisor, Sri Ramakrishnan, Well, people started freaking out, and they started attacking him on the socials, and they started attacking Donald Trump on the socials as well. After the announcement, some folks started really becoming aggressive on X because they believe that this guy, number one, some say he is a foreigner, which, well, he's from India, but he's an American citizen, and that he has support for immigration reforms like removing limits on green cards for people from specific countries. Another person said he was going to run the country. So Donald Trump is, as you know, he is very tight on immigration. He is a hawk on illegal immigration. He wants to close the border and so forth. And so for a lot of folks, they were left confused by a guy from India coming into the Trump administration and being an AI policy advisor. But here's the deal, is that, number one, he's simply coming in as a policy advisor. This person is wrong in saying that he was going to run the country. I don't know where that guy got that from. But he does have some thoughts on immigration and visas and trying to open up the visa programs to have more people come in for via H-1B visas. And so David Sachs, he jumps into the fray, right? He jumps into the fray, Trump ally, big-time supporter of Sri Ram Krishnan, and he takes to Twitter and he said this. He says, this guy has been a U.S. citizen for a decade. No, he's not going to be running America. He's advising on AI policy. That's it. He'll have no influence over U.S. immigration policy. These attacks, David Sachs says, has become crude, not in the holiday spirit. He then says, I'm signing off now. Have a Merry Christmas. And so people, of course, as you can imagine, started going after David Sachs. Elon Musk then jumps into the argument. Now realize this guy has worked with Elon Musk, Sri Ram Krishnan. He's worked with Elon Musk before. Again, I just mentioned over there at X. Before it was X, it was Twitter. And he came in with Elon Musk, and he helped him turn X around, and he turned it into the bastion of free speech that it currently is. And so Elon gets into the argument. This is from the Daily Mail. South African-born Elon Musk, who was once an immigrant to the U.S., illegally overstaying his visa to build a future here. He employs hundreds of foreign-born engineers at his Tesla and SpaceX companies and says they fill a shortage of American-born workers. Musk called a shortage of excellent engineering talent a fundamental limiting factor in Silicon Valley in a tweet on Wednesday, arguing that immigrant labor is an essential ingredient in American innovation and warning of a dire shortage of extremely talented and motivated engineers in America. The quote, "If you force the world's best talent to play for the other side, America will lose," end of story, as Musk was responding to critics. So basically what Elon is saying is that you've got all of these people that are coming into this country via H-1B visas, and without them, America would lose. Because here in America, he says, there's a shortage of excellent engineering talent, which is a fundamental limiting factor in Silicon Valley. So I guess that's part of the question, is there really a lack of excellent engineering talent? Is there a shortage? There's a great debate going on right now on X. Now, where does Donald Trump stand on all of this? Because he has been quiet, as far as I can tell, throughout the day. He's not jumping in. You've got Vivek Ramaswamy. Wait till I read you his statement on all of this. But where does Donald Trump stand on all of this? Well, Trump just recently, actually, was on a call with a bunch of tech entrepreneurs. And the tech entrepreneurs, they want the expansion of H-1B visas as well. They want the expansion because that means that they can bring in these workers on these visas from other countries like China and like India, like Japan, and some of these other countries. And this is a very controversial thing. This is what Donald Trump said.
I think, Mr. President, is we need high-skilled workers in this country.
Yes.
We need to recruit the best and brightest from the world. Every time we get somebody super intelligent from India or Europe, any country, and we can get these great people into our country, and that's a loss for our adversaries and our competitors, and it's a gain for us. But I've never heard you talk about this. Can you please promise us you will give us more ability to import the best and brightest around the world to America?
I do promise, but I happen to agree. That's why I promise. Otherwise, I wouldn't promise. Let me just tell you that it's so sad when we lose people from Harvard, MIT, from the greatest schools and lesser schools that are phenomenal schools also. And what I wanted to do, and I would have done this, but then we had to solve the COVID problem because that came in and, sort of dominated for a little while, as you perhaps know. But what I want to do and what I will do is you graduate from a college, I think you should get automatically as part of your diploma a green card to be able to stay in this country. And that includes junior colleges, too. Anybody graduates from a college, you go in there for 2 years or 4 years. If you graduate or you get a doctorate degree from a college, you should be able to stay in this country. And you know more stories than I do, but I know of stories where people graduated from a top college or from a college, and they desperately wanted to stay here. They had a plan for a company, a concept, and they can't. They go back to India, they go back to China, they do the same basic company in those places, and they become multi-billionaires employing thousands and thousands of people, and it could have been done here.
All right, so that's Donald Trump when he was running for president here just this last time. Part of the problem is that Trump has been all over the place on this. I mean, just recently, you just heard him. He was talking to a bunch of, tech entrepreneurs. And he was all for the expanding, it sounds like, of the program and H-1Bs and also green cards and so forth, basically bringing in employees from other countries. But way back on March 3rd of 2016, here's what he posted. Megyn Kelly asked about highly skilled immigration. The H-1B program, he said, is neither high-skilled nor immigration. These are temporary foreign workers imported from abroad for the explicit purpose of substituting for American workers at lower pay. In 2016, Donald Trump said, I remain totally committed to eliminating rampant, widespread H-1B abuse and ending outrageous practices such as those that occurred at Disney in Florida, when Americans were forced to train their foreign replacements. Trump saying, I will end forever the use of the H-1B as a cheap labor program and institute an absolute requirement to hire American workers first for every visa and immigration program, no exceptions. So he's a little all over the place on this one. Now, the problem with H-1B visas is that the accusation is, and I believe that this is true, that it is used to import cheaper labor. I'm going to get into that. But first of all, you heard the president. You heard him back in 2016. I just read you the statement where he was talking about what happened at Disney. So basically, this is a horrible story from back in 2016. The Daily Mail reported that Disney forced 250 of its American IT workers to train the workers who eventually replaced them from other countries. It is a horrible story. This guy's name is Leo Pereiro, and this was part of his testimony because this ultimately ended up in a lawsuit.
How was I going to break news to my family and pay all of our expenses? I would soon be living on unemployment. Your jobs have been given over to a foreign workforce. In the meantime, you will be training your replacements until your jobs are 100% transferred over to them. And if you do not cooperate, you will not receive any severance pay. Later that same day, I clearly remember going to the local church pumpkin sale and having to tell the kids I couldn't buy any of that here because my job was being turned over to a foreign worker. I started to think what kind of an American I was becoming. Was I going to become part of ruining our country by taking severance pay in exchange for training my foreign replacement? We all felt extremely humiliated. when the foreign worker sat next to us and watched everything that we did. The final period of the 90 days was the most disgraceful and demoralizing, as we had to watch the foreign workers completely take over our jobs. And we came to grips that the upcoming Disney jobs promise didn't exist. How can it be that everybody that hears these stories about Disney and the like, from the barbers to the bankers, are completely shocked? Yet our lawmakers continue to debate the topic and take no action.
So that was just part of the testimony from this guy, Leo Pereiro. And, of course, I got that off of the socials. And Donald Trump, back then, when he was running for president in 2016, said he actually backed the American workers at that point. I've got more on this, and specifically the problems with H-1B visas and how American companies are using them to ice out American workers. Details straight ahead. 866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number. 866-907-3339. Dan Mandis here, in for Gary and Eric. This is Red Eye Radio.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
Red Eye Radio, 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. Follow me on the socials on X and Facebook at Dan Mandis Show. And I do host a morning show in Nashville, Tennessee on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. So H-1B visas and the battle going on right now, pretty serious battle as well, going on earlier today, this evening, perhaps right now on X. Elon Musk, Vivek Ramaswamy, and others in Donald Trump's orbit are advocating for H-1B visas. Now, I just explained to you what these are. Basically, an H-1B visa allows a company to bring in a foreign worker. A lot of people say that those H-1B visas, that entire program, has been abused. And people do say, and I will tell you that I believe that this program has been abused. And so here's a number of different problems with these visas. Companies are not hiring American workers. There's a massive amount of fraud. There's a massive amount of abuse. And basically what happens is you want, you have some guy from India who wants to come live in America. He's going to work for far cheaper than an American. And that's just a fact. So if you've got an engineering position or whatever that pays, you got to pay $150,000 for an American to come in, you utilize an H-1B visa, you can get some dude in here from India for $70,000. And that's what's going on. And so for Elon Musk and others who were advocating for the H-1B visa program, and Elon is out there saying, I use this program all the time. Okay, well, if you trust Elon to utilize the program without the fraud and, legally, if you will, in the sense that he's going to look for American workers first, and if he can't find an American worker, then he brings in somebody from India or wherever. But the problem is you have all these companies that are accused of using this program to bring in cheap labor. The Department of Labor investigated and found that the lower pay actually hurts both foreign workers and especially U.S. workers. There's a lot of problems with the H-1B visa program. I'm going to read to you what Vivek Ramaswamy had to say about this. He disses American culture. It's coming up next.
Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios. Now for Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, here is Dan Mandis.
866-90 Red Eye is the phone number, 866-907-3339. Appreciate you listening. I host a morning show in Nashville, Tennessee on Super Talk 99.7 WTN, talking about the big MAGA controversy over H-1B visas. Donald Trump appointing someone and enlisting someone named Sriram Krishnan as an AI policy advisor. Very controversial in the sense that Krishnan is somebody who wants to see an expansion of H-1B visas. And I was spending the first segment or two talking about what H-1B visas are. And basically, it is a visa that companies can utilize to bring in foreign workers, theoretically, if they can't find American workers to fill crucial, by and large, tech roles. And the accusation by people on the, I would say on Trump's side, although there's a lot of conflict here, but a lot of folks will say, well, what you're doing is you're hiring foreign workers over American workers because there's a lot of corruption in the H-1B system. You've got David Sachs out there, Elon Musk also strongly advocating for an expansion of the H-1B program. Donald Trump in 2016 said that he was going to demand that companies hire American workers first. But then more recently, he said, no, we're going to go ahead and expand this program. So he's seems to have gone several different directions on this. And listen, people are allowed to change. 2016 to 2024, that's 8 years. And certainly your perspective can change. But I want to read to you what Vivek Ramaswamy had to say. Because realize a lot of this stuff was playing out on Twitter, as you had people who are supportive of Donald Trump, supportive of America first, supportive of American workers first. And you've got Elon and David Sachs and others in Trump's orbit advocating for the expanded H-1B program. So Vivek Ramaswamy gets into this, and I'm curious as to what you think on this, because I don't necessarily think that Vivek is wrong when he says, quote, the reason top tech companies often hire foreign-born and first-generation engineers over Native Americans is not because of an innate American IQ deficit, a lazy and wrong explanation. A key part of it, he says, comes down to the C word, culture. Tough questions demand tough answers, and if we're really serious about fixing the problem, we have got to confront the truth. He says our American culture has venerated or revered mediocrity over excellence for way too long. He says at least since the 90s and likely longer. He says that doesn't start in college, it starts young. He goes on to say, a culture that celebrates the prom queen over the math Olympiad champion, or the jock over the valedictorian. That culture will not produce the best engineers. A culture that venerates Corey from Boy Meets World, or Zach and Slater over Screech in Saved by the Bell, or Stefan over Steve Urkel in Family Matters will not produce the best engineers. In other words, he's saying that our culture is off the rails. Our culture is off the track because we revere the wrong things. We revere sports. We revere movie stars. We revere musicians. We don't revere the really smart people. We don't revere the entrepreneurs. We don't revere the people that study in school. We don't revere the people that work hard to get good grades to become the valedictorian. In high school, let me ask you this. In high school, did more people know once you graduated and a few years after you graduated, could you remember the name of the quarterback or the name of the valedictorian? Now, I'm guilty of this too. I graduated my high school in 1986. I could tell you who the quarterback was for the varsity football team. I couldn't tell you who the valedictorian was. And this was back in 1986. He says, I know multiple sets of immigrant parents in the 1990s who actively limited how much their kids could watch those TV shows precisely because they promoted mediocrity, and their kids went on to become wildly successful STEM graduates. He says more movies, and I haven't heard of these movies, but more movies like Whiplash, fewer reruns of Friends, more math tutoring, fewer sleepovers, more weekend science competitions, fewer Saturday morning cartoons, more books, less TV, more creating, less chillin', more extracurriculars, less hanging out at the mall. Vivek Ramaswamy says most normal American parents look skeptically at those kinds of parents. More normal American kids view such those kinds of kids with scorn. If you grow up aspiring to normalcy, normalcy is what you will achieve, says Vivek Ramaswamy. He says, now close your eyes and visualize which families you knew in the 1990s, or even now, who raised their kids according to one model versus the other. Be brutally honest. He says normalcy does not cut it in a hyper-competitive global market for technical talent. And if we pretend like it does, we'll have our asses handed to us by China. Basically, he says that our culture values the wrong things. Our culture, again, values Taylor Swift over entrepreneurs. We value, I don't know, I don't value these people, so I can't pull one out of my head, but, over, the people that really aspire to change our culture and make something of themselves from an entrepreneurial and business standpoint. And that's what's sad in our country. What's sad in our country, and I agree with, by and large, with what Vivek Ramaswamy is saying, is that there's a lot of parents out in America, and for many years, they've valued the wrong things. Vivek Ramaswamy says this can be our Sputnik moment. He says, we've awakened from slumber before, and we can do it again. Trump's election, hopefully, marks the beginning of a new golden era in America, but only if our culture fully wakes up. A culture that once again prioritizes achievement over normalcy, excellence over mediocrity, nerdiness over conformity, hard work over laziness. He says that's the work we have cut out for us rather than wallowing in victimhood and just wishing or legislating alternative hiring practices into existence. He says, I am confident we can do it. So I will tell you, there's some truth. It's rather sweeping, Vivek Ramaswamy says. It is rather sweeping because there are a lot of parents who do value the right things, but there's a lot of parents that don't. But there's a lot of problems. It all goes back to H-1B visas. Part of what Vivek is trying to say is that, by and large, the American people lack exceptionalism. I would disagree with that, by the way. You see, part of the problem with this story for me is that many different things can be true. Some of what Vivek said is absolute truth. But let's all go back and make sure that we understand that, to me, the problem is not a lack of American exceptionalism. The problem is the fact that a lot of companies have been abusing the H-1B visa program. I was telling you about the Department of Labor investigating. They did find that the lower pay hurts both the foreign workers, of course, and especially U.S. workers because it suppresses the wages. They say there's clear evidence that wages are being suppressed because if you, as an American, you know that a person from, let's just say, India, will accept 30% less than if you want that job, you have to accept the lower pay. Here's the other dynamic, is that if you are a boss or you are a business owner or manager, and you know that your employee here on an H-1B visa is worried about being deported, well, then you know that they'll accept the longer hours. They'll accept maybe working more overtime, working holidays, doing whatever it takes, because they don't want to not only lose their job, but they don't want to lose access to America. So they're willing to accept perhaps, let's just say, some really brutal working conditions because they don't want to lose their home, they don't want to lose their job. You know what else they also found, by the way, when they did this investigation? Is that H-1B visa holders, they actually lie about their experience and their education. And so they come here on an H-1B visa, but then they disappear into America, never to be found again. So that is also happening. Apple, and by the way, if you're going to say that this is not happening, that companies are not hiring cheap overseas labor instead of American workers, Apple had to pay $25 million to settle a lawsuit over hiring foreign workers over American workers. That was Apple. Other companies have been popped as well. A lot of people do say that this program is necessary because either there aren't enough American workers or that there aren't enough qualified American workers. The Daily Mail reported that story back in 2016. Disney forcing 250 of its American IT workers to train the workers who eventually replaced them. A lawsuit was brought, but the lawsuit was dismissed. So this is a really interesting battle going on. By the way, in case you didn't know, Biden's DHS just announced a new rule giving even more flexibility for companies to use H-1B visas. More flexibility, easier to use the program. Seems to me like it is an expansion of the H-1B visa program. And they wanted to do it before Donald Trump came into office. And so this is going to be a big test for Donald Trump because clearly many of his supporters, they don't like this policy. They don't like the H-1B visas. They feel like it's hiring foreign workers over American workers. They understand that wages are being suppressed. And so Trump, again, he's kind of been all over the place on this one. So right now, because he's got his surrogates, his inner circle coming out, and they're going back and forth with his supporters on social media. And everybody's fighting amongst each other. And so Trump has to come out and explain to his supporters what exactly is his policy, the differences between 2016 and 2024. If there is a difference, it sounds like there is. I played you the audio. But the other thing is this. Welcome to politics, where sometimes you agree with the guy you voted for, but sometimes you don't. We all agree that the border is being overrun. Most people, according to the polling, do believe that we do need mass deportation. But just because you agree on a closed border and mass deportation doesn't mean that we all agree on the H-1B visa program. To me, there is no doubt that this program is replacing American workers and is being abused. 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. We'll return next on Red Eye Radio.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
Red Eye Radio, 866-90-RED-EYE. Dan in for Gary and Eric. They return after the new year. So I was talking about, as Vivek Ramaswamy was complaining, he posted about how here in America we value the wrong things. And we value, for example, in high school, the quarterback of the football team and not the valedictorian. And so as I was in the middle of that monologue, because, I take notes, but for the most part, it's extemporaneous. And I start thinking in the middle of my monologue, all right, Mandis, who was the valedictorian when you were in high school way back in 1986? I don't know. And now I'm obsessing over this, and I'm like taking to Google to see if I can find out who was the valedictorian for my high school way back in 1986. More of your calls coming up. This is Red Eye Radio.
Top of the Hour News is brought to you by House Products. Visit houseproducts.com.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios. For Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, Dan Mandis, this is Red Eye Radio.
866-90 Red Eye is the phone number, 866-907-3339. In the previous hour, we're talking about H-1B visas and how there is a big battle going on within the Make America Great Again movement because Donald Trump's inner circle is advocating for H-1B visas. And basically, if you don't know what an H-1B visa is, it means that if, you own a company and you do engineering, you do AI kind of work, whatever, and you can't find an American worker, then you can use H-1B visas and import a worker from some other part of the world. And so might be India, might be Europe, China, whatever. But the problem is that this program, which has been around since I think the 90s, 1990, I think, it's been incredibly abused. Because the H-1B visa program, really, it's supposed to be for companies that can't find American workers. But the reality is that companies are abusing it. And they're bringing people in from other countries, and they're paying them less than they would have to pay American workers. I mean, we've seen the stories over and over again on this. You had Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk both, and David Sachs as well. 3 people, part of Donald Trump's inner circle. They're all out there saying, yes, H-1B visas. We need them, we need them, we need them. We don't have the great American workers that we once did. And so we have to import workers from India. In India, I'm just going to tell you, like, if you do any investigation on this, any research on this, you'll see that a lot of the consternation, a lot of the frustration is that these companies are bringing in people from India. And there's example after example of companies that have been caught firing American workers and bringing in foreign workers and paying them less. And so I think there's a couple of different things that are going on. Number one is you do have Ramaswamy and you do have Elon Musk, and they are obviously entrepreneurs who have utilized the H-1B program, the visa program, a lot to bring in workers from foreign countries. And so they're advocating for it, but at the same time, you do have a lot of fraud. And then you had Vivek Ramaswamy. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but because all of this was playing out on social media. All of this was like you had Ramaswamy on X and you had Elon Musk on X, and they're saying all of these different things, advocating for the H-1B visa program, and you had thousands of Donald Trump supporters that were really pushing back on them because they understand, like I understand, that this is essentially replacing American workers for cheaper labor from other countries. And that is just a fact. So this is a big test for Donald Trump. Vivek Ramaswamy, by the way, Vivek Ramaswamy said, well, the big problem that we have in our country, if you're just joining us, Vivek Ramaswamy said the big problem we have in our country is that we don't value the proper things. We value the quarterback instead of the valedictorian. We value movie stars and musicians instead of mathematicians. And that's why in our country, we revere mediocrity over excellence. And we've done it, he says, for way too long. And that's why he says that we don't have the best engineers. We don't have the best computer programmers. We don't have the best AI experts. Because in our country, we revere mediocrity. And while I do understand that there is some of that here, I don't believe, and I could be wrong, and some of y'all may call up and tell me I'm wrong, and that's fine, 866-90-RED-EYE. Maybe he's right, but I don't think so. Because I've heard too many horror stories of good people that have been fired because they brought in a bunch of people from India. And I hate to say it, that's just a fact. 866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. James is in Golden, Colorado on Red Eye Radio. Hey, James.
Hi. Thanks for taking my call.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
I just got done working 16 hours straight for the federal government because I got replaced by H-1B visa workers 18 and a half years ago, which is why I fled to the federal government. I've been working 16-hour days in preparation for retirement, so I'll have enough money behind me in order to retire. And I intend to try to go back to work as a manufacturing engineer in the private sector. If you want to solve the H-1B problem, like I said, I've been replaced by H-1B workers. Overstays, visa overstays were replacing me. You pay the H-1B, you require the corporations to pay the H-1B visa workers more than what they pay their engineers, their computer programmers, their whatever positions they're hiring for, pay them more than the American workers. It's counterintuitive, but it will prevent the companies from abusing the H-1B programs to hire cheaper labor.
It's almost like a tariff on people.
It will incentivize, yes, exactly, and it will incentivize the companies to invest in training for people, because investing in people that already have training, they're already here, they're already citizens, will be less expensive than paying a foreigner to move all the way to the United States and pay a higher salary to that person. It would eliminate probably 90% of the H-1B program and would only leave behind what the original intent was of the H-1B, which was for positions and skills that could not be hired here in the United States.
Correct.
Truly people that they could not get.
Yeah,
like
and let me ask you, if I may, James, let me ask you, in like a minute, what happened to you? Tell folks so that they can have a real life experience. What happened to you? What were you doing? And then the company came to you and they said,
I was a manufacturing engineer in the optics and electronics industry, and the company came to me and they said, we've got this guy that we hired as a battery specialist. He is going to take over your position as a manufacturing engineer, and I got displaced. I got laid off. And that's when I started looking for a job in the federal government. And so, like I said, I've been working for the federal government for 18 and a half years. I'm not going to say which agency, but if you know something about the federal government, when I say I'll be forced to retire in a year and a half, in a year and a half, you can put the math together and say he's got 20 years, he's this type of employee, being forced to retire. And like I said, I'm working 16-hour days now, earning a pile of money and working overtime. But I'm working, I work 12 overtimes a pay period on average right now. That's 6 overtimes a week. 6 overtimes a week. And an overtime for me is 8 hours. We're not talking 15-minute or half-hour overtimes. We're talking 6 extra 8-hour shifts, 48 hours of overtime a week to prepare for my retirement.
James, let me ask you: are you going to make it? Are you going to make it to retirement?
Yes, in preparation for doing this, I took advantage of my excellent health care and went and got my heart completely checked out to make sure I wouldn't drop dead of a heart attack.
All right, James, thank you very much for calling in and sharing your story. One of the things you heard James say is that H-1B visas, they're only supposed to be for jobs that cannot be done by Americans. Well, there's different types of visas. The O-1-A visa is for people with extraordinary ability or achievement. That is different from the H-1B visa. The O-1 non-immigrant visa is for the individual who possesses extraordinary ability in the science, arts, education, business, or athletics, or who has demonstrated a record of extraordinary achievement in the motion picture or television industry, so on and so forth. In other words, the extraordinary ability visa is for that top 1%, who it is just somebody who, like an Elon Musk, for example, like an Elon Musk or maybe like a Vivek Ramaswamy, people who clearly are outstanding at what they do. And so if, for example, Ramaswamy is from Ohio. By the way, people, bless your hearts, man. People who are attacking Vivek Ramaswamy as a foreigner, he was born in Ohio. But if he was from some other part of the world, like Elon Musk is, and you're somebody who has a company, and you want to bring in somebody on one of these O-1 non-immigrant visas, that's the extraordinary ability visa. The H-1B visa, they're just using, in my opinion, again, you just heard James's, I think his name was James, James's story where he was just replaced. And I'm assuming it was for a younger and cheaper, I don't know about younger, but it's definitely a cheaper person from some other nation, because that is what's going on. This is Jake in Portland, Oregon on Red Eye Radio. Hey there, Jake.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I appreciate what you're bringing up. It's huge. And I'm going to deviate a little and go from an agricultural point of view, if you're okay with that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so child labor laws changed in the 70s, and having the summer kids go out work on the farms completely changed the narrative on an agricultural point of view. And as a result, the Hispanic population took over for, I'm going to say, the white kids that didn't do the jobs anymore because they couldn't go out in the berry fields for whatever reasons. Now, this has become larger and larger. And I would argue that we do have a problem. But I will also argue that you're not going to get the white person to come in and do the dairy jobs. You're not going to get them to do the farm jobs. They're not taking anybody's place because, quite honestly, if you want to talk about what Vivek is talking about, we have a culture that has looked at agriculture as one of those dirty jobs beyond me and has created a void that has to be filled one way or the other, either automation or whoever you can get. And hopefully whoever you can get will show up and help you run your farm, dairy, whatever operation you have, even the landscaping. And so this has created that kind of a situation. And until we wake up to that, we're going to have to deal with this on that level, knowing full well that we have to control the border.
Yeah, and I think part of what Donald Trump has said, and Jake, I appreciate the call and your perspective on that. Part of what needs to happen is we need to fix, and I mean, I know you all have heard this before, the immigration policies in this country, the immigration program in this country is a train wreck in the sense that it takes too long for people who want to come in legally to come in legally. That's a problem. Now, I'm not excusing people to come into this country illegally. Please don't get me wrong. But if there's people that want to come in and we want to bring them in and they pass background checks and they want to come in, they're going to work in the fields, work on the farms, whatever, well, then that's fine. We bring those people in as long as we know who they are and what they want to do here, and they want to come and they want to work. That's fine. For me, as long as they're vetted and as long as they're legal. My problem, obviously, is, of course, illegal immigration. But it is a different dynamic because with the H-1B visa program that is being abused, in my opinion, by a lot of these corporations, there are people here in America who will do the job. And again, not to belabor the point, but we've seen all of these different stories of companies who have let go American workers and hired cheaper labor from places like India and other places, because guess what? They all want to come to America. And so they're willing to take less for the opportunity to come to America. You can pay one dude $70,000 who's from India as opposed to paying an American $120,000. And so one guy had a great point. Make all of those companies pay the person from India or wherever they come from the same amount of money that you would have to pay an American worker, and maybe a little bit more. Again, it's like a tariff on people. The phone number, 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. More of your calls coming up on Red Eye Radio.
Brought to you by FPPF, Fuel Power Max.
Owner-operators with authority generally have two options when it comes to sourcing freight. Brokers on the spot market or directly from the source, the shipper. As any trucker with relatively recent experience with spot freight knows, the highs of working the load boards can be really high. On the other side of that coin, however, when the market flips in favor of shippers, it can be tough to keep your business afloat working with brokers. The smallest carriers with direct customers, however, can hang on through tough times or even prosper, as long as demand for their customers' product remains at least somewhat stable. Owner-operators in it for the long haul make direct business with customers a principal goal. Owner-Operator Business 101 is provided by Overdrive's Partners in Business program. Go to overdriveonline.com to the Partners in Business section of the website for more detail on this and many other topics.
Brought to you by Shell Rotella, with advanced synthetic technology is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
Red Eye Radio, 866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. John is calling from Arkansas on Red Eye Radio. John, how are you?
Hey, how are you? How was your Christmas?
Christmas was good, man. Thanks for asking. Go ahead, sir. What do you think about all this?
Yeah. Well, the first problem is our education system isn't up to par. The second of all is our higher 198 IQ, 225 IQ, which is higher than Einstein, are being treated lousy by some companies. And my friend Patricia, her father worked for the veterinary supply in Shell Chemical, and he was let go 2 years before he was to retire. So he didn't get his retirement. So that does happen. You know, but the other thing is our education, and we have to educate the right people. We cannot teach an 80 IQ, a 60 IQ, or special ed like I am. You've got to cradle your people that are smart, like Einstein's, like Ramaswamy, like Bill Gates, and these other people. So you got to really respect them and teach them well. But like I said, some people just are not made to be in corporations or to be scientists or to be outstanding musicians that know music like Beethoven or the guy from U2. They're just not good at certain things, and you can't expect them to be. And a lot of our people have left to go to the European countries.
Well, and part of that, and I appreciate the call, part of what's going on is, I agree with you, our education system leaves a lot to be desired. However, that doesn't distract from the fact that these things are happening, and people are being displaced. Americans are being displaced in favor of foreign workers, and they're doing it via this H-1B visa program. And this is going to be a big problem for a lot of people within the Trump orbit because you have the base. I think there's a lot of Trump supporters, and by the way, I'm a Trump supporter, who have a problem with this program. And trust me when I say, I understand that there is a need for the H-1B visa program. Totally get it. But I also understand, like, multiple things can be true. I also understand that companies are abusing this program and good Americans are getting screwed.
Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios. Now, for Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, here is Dan Mandis.
866-90 Red Eye is the phone number, 866-907-3339. By the way, Joe Biden has gone to St. Croix for his last vacation as president. And, you know, some people are losing their minds over this, but let's all be honest. Joe Biden's brain has been on vacation for like 4 years. President Biden on Thursday arrived in St. Croix for his last vacation as president before leaving office next month. The president left the White House the day after Christmas with First Lady Jill Biden. He arrived in St. Croix in the U.S. Virgin Islands around 2 p.m. Eastern on Thursday, along with his daughter, Ashley Biden. You know, some people are losing their ever-loving minds over this. You know, he was, when that whole budget battle that we were talking about earlier, when all that was going on, he was absent. I mean, the government was about to shut down. Nobody knew, you know, where he was. He wasn't working with the Democrats. He really wasn't doing anything. The Hill writes, the president was criticized last week for being absent during talks to keep the government open, while President-elect Donald Trump helped kill that bipartisan measure Speaker Mike Johnson negotiated. And the White House has absolutely no interest in talking to the media. That is also part of the conversation. I'm going to have to look this up. I think Joe Biden, has he been the most vacationed president ever? I think he has. He's going to Italy next month. He's going to go see the Pope, among others. It's going to be his last actual trip as the president. He's going to meet with Pope Francis. Of course, Pope Francis, I hope the Pope is happy because, as you know, Joe Biden, he commuted all those sentences for all of those horrific murderers at the federal level. And so he saved the lives, commuting those sentences to lifetime sentences without parole, saving the lives of people who are just the absolute worst people on earth. Now, I think part of what's going to happen is that Donald Trump, I mean, on day one, Donald Trump is going to, I can imagine, Trump said he was going to do it within 9 minutes, but all the J6ers are going to be let free. He is just going to let all of those folks out of prison. And you know why? Do you know why that now is more justified than ever? Is because you have people, and I know what some of you folks are thinking. I know that the people in the media, they obsess over this. Even the ones who assaulted police officers. Well, Joe Biden just commuted the sentences of people who killed police officers. So Donald Trump absolutely now has the justification to pardon all of those J6ers and let them out. Now, I don't know if he will, and there's some that did assault police officers, some of the J6ers. In the past, Donald Trump has said, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at, each case individually. So I don't know if Joe Biden commuting the death sentences of those 37 wretched, horrific murderers has now given Donald Trump the inspiration or the justification to let all of those J6ers out, pardon all of them and just say, you're free. But I think that's what he may do. Because there's a lot of Americans who are really, really angry at what Joe Biden did. By the way, did you see, speaking of angry, and then I'm going to get to your calls, but did you see what Tom Homan said? Borders are to the Washington Post. Liberals decried Tom Homan's cruel plans to use what they called concentration camps, seen in Donald Trump's first term as part of the incoming administration's plan to get tough on illegal immigration. So apparently what he said to the Washington Post is nothing different than what he said before. Tom Homan confirmed, once again, ICE will put families with children in detention centers, but has offered an assurance his efforts will be executed with care. Here's what I don't understand, and this is what gets so frustrating to me, is that on the one hand, you have all of this hand-wringing. Oh, my God, you're going to separate children from their parents. So then you put them all together. Oh, my God, you're putting kids and their parents in detention centers. Well, okay. So what do you want? Do you want families separated or do you want them together? Because if you want them together, then they're going to be together in, yes, detention centers, not concentration camps. Memo to the snowflake melting liberals out there. A detention center is just that, where they stay until they're deported. Not killed. Deported. You do know what happened in the concentration camps, do you not? It's not the same thing. That's why, it is so hard, friends, it is so hard as a talk show host to take liberals seriously. I used to say that people who would say, well, liberalism is a mental illness. And as somebody who knows people that are literally, actually mentally ill, I took some offense to that. But now I'm beginning to see that it's real. Because if you can't tell the difference between a detention center where people are held until their cases are heard and they're deported, if you can't tell the difference between that and a concentration camp where people were brutally killed and tortured, experiments done on them, if you can't tell the difference between those two, then I believe that you are mentally ill. And Tom Homan is saying we've got to put them somewhere. If they're picked up and their families are picked up, then we have to put them in these detention centers and then we send them along their merry way. The quote, we need to show the American people that we can do this and not be inhumane about it. He says we can put people in detention centers, then send them out of the country, deport them, but we're not going to be inhumane. He says we can't lose the faith of the American people, he told the Washington Post. Now, remember what Tom Homan said to 60 Minutes.
One estimate that says we have seen one estimate that says it would cost $88 billion to deport 1 million people a year.
I don't know if that's accurate or not.
Is that what American taxpayers should expect?
What price do you put on national security? Is that worth it?
Yep.
Is there a way to carry out mass deportation without separating families?
Of course there is. Families can be deported together.
I don't know. I'm sorry, but I can't get enough of that. I just can't. The left going wild in their reaction to Homan's plans, claiming everything from Nazi comparisons to corruption from the border czar. Guy on Twitter, X, Jim Stewart, these are concentration camps, he says in all caps. By the way, Jim Stewart describes himself as an anti-fascist on X. One liberal asked, does anyone know how much stock does Tom Homan own for private prisons? Again, these are not private prisons. Actually, these are detention centers. And they're going to be held in the detention centers, and then they're going to be sent along their merry way. Now, private prisons are what one of the guys that that Joe Biden commuted his sentence. Remember that? The guy that kept kids in jail in these private prisons as he was getting kickbacks? And Joe Biden commuted his sentence? No, Joe Biden is the one that seems to have a more of an appreciation for private prisons and the people that kept kids in those private prisons because they were getting kickbacks. That's a Joe Biden thing. Guy named Christopher Webb, who describes himself as a lifelong Dem, yelled, "Cruelty is still the point." And it goes on and on. They say this is not an administration, it's a crime spree. Okay. Homan says that the Trump administration will not endeavor to break up families if they deport the parents for being in the United States illegally. The families, they say, who potentially have young children born in America will be told to decide for themselves whether to exit the country together or be broken up. He says you knew you were in the country illegally and chose to have a child. So he's saying, so you put your family in that position, Homan said, explaining his attitude towards families who will be placed in these situations. Ultimately, he says the goal will be to keep families together, regardless of the legality of how either the parents or the children got into the United States. Mike Lawler is a Republican out of the state of New York. This was on CNN earlier today, and he's talking about the horrible things that have been going on in New York thanks to illegal immigration, and he says that Tom Homan and Donald Trump, they're on the right track.
I know he understands the problem that they want to solve, but he doesn't seem to have a sense of the scope of what it's going to take, what it's going to cost. And that's a critical question.
Well, I actually had a meeting with Tom Homan the other day, along with a number of my colleagues, and we talked about this very issue. Look, it's already costing states like New York billions of dollars of taxpayer money to provide free housing, clothing, food, education, and health care to illegal immigrants. Then you have the situation where you have criminal aliens committing violent crimes, just as we saw a woman being burned alive on a subway by a man who was previously deported and then came back into the United States illegally.
Yeah, I mean, listen, he is absolutely right. He had a lot of other great things to say, and I'll continue to weave in that audio as the evening progresses. This is Pat calling from Texas on Red Eye Radio. Pat, thanks for calling in. Go ahead.
I'll forget why I called. No, I had originally called about the H-1B visas. I wanted to say that I worked for undergraduate and graduate in 2 international offices, then a counselor in another firm during 2000 when Bill Gates proclaimed, "Oh, I can't find American workers," ran to Ted Kennedy then, who got his Senate billionaires who became billionaires because of all the millions of Americans they've wiped out our savings. But we are subsidizing these people coming in, just like these illegals, and we're neutralizing our own heritage because the languages, there's over 400 languages in our schools that our educators have to deal with. And we're still in the agrarian system with that education system. But the whole thing is the cost. And we have groups that's their whole goal, to come here and overpopulate. And they're doing it because of the AFDC. But we keep subsidizing all these people. All the developed countries, that's the goal, to break our developed countries.
Well, Pat, hey, Pat, let me ask you. So when you say that we're subsidizing the H-1B, I get we're subsidizing illegal aliens. Trust me when I say I got that. But when you say we're subsidizing the H-1B programs, what does that mean?
The people that are coming in don't necessarily speak English, or that's not their primary language, and then they're bringing family. When they gave that first 1 million visas in 2000, they gave another 1 million for all their families and all their relatives. That's that lottery visa. They can select who they want to. That's been going on. We have half this country that haven't even assimilated. I mean, it just continues. We have whole clusters, cities within cities, that are from Central America and now from the world. The world has now come in. There's a nation that hasn't sent their early released prisoners and their mental institutions, just like Castro did.
Well, and Pat, I get it. Here's what I would say to that, because this H-1B, these are two different things. The problems on the border, absolutely agree with you, Pat, 100,000%. It's different, the border issues, with the H-1B visa issue. I'm telling you, like, my opinion is the H-1B visa issue, it is being abused. And I think that the American companies, based on what I've seen over a lot of years, the American companies are hiring these folks from out of our country cheaper than people in our country. That is a big problem. So, but there's a lot of issues that we have embedded in both of these conversations. We'll continue to have that next on Red Eye Radio.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
It's Red Eye Radio, 866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. Coming up, Nikki Hailey goes after Vivek Ramaswamy. Details straight ahead on Red Eye Radio.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios. For Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, Dan Mandis, this is Red Eye Radio.
866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. I host a morning show in Nashville, Tennessee on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. And you can find me on the socials at Dan Mandis Show. By the way, Gary and Eric, they return next after the first of the year. Looking forward to their return. So you've got now, if you're just joining us, there's a lot going on, and there is a war brewing within the MAGA movement. Nikki Hailey is now going after Vivek Ramaswamy. Now, let's all be honest, Nikki Hailey, not necessarily part of Donald Trump's inner circle. But if you're just joining us, there's a big battle going on, and it's been happening really yesterday, the 26th, where you had Vivek Ramaswamy. You also had Elon Musk and others within the Trump orbit. And there's a big battle going on regarding H-1B visas. And this is fascinating because I think part of what's going on is the media is really enjoying the battle. You have Elon defending the H-1B visa programs. You have Vivek Ramaswamy jumping in, and he is bashing American culture. And now you've got Nikki Hailey going after Vivek Ramaswamy. And it all started when Donald Trump appoints this guy, Sriram Krishnan, as an AI policy advisor. Now, this guy is an American citizen. He has been for about 10 years. He's worked at Microsoft and Twitter and Yahoo and Facebook. And he also worked with Elon Musk on rebuilding Twitter. And I would assume he helped Elon free it up from censorship. And then he happens to be from India. But he's been working with the tech industry for years now. And so you have people that lost their ever-loving minds because apparently old Sriram Krishnan, he is pro H-1B visa. Now, if you don't know what an H-1B visa is, it is a visa that allows employers here in America to employ foreign workers in specialty occupations. It requires specialized knowledge and a bachelor's degree or the equivalent work experience. You can stay here in America for 3 years, extend to 6, and then you can reapply. So if you own a company and you have a special AI type of program that you're rolling out, and there's a guy in India or maybe Germany, whatever, who knows all about that type of program, you can hire him to come to America and help you roll it out because he is an expert. And just because he lives in Germany or Australia or India, an H-1B visa will allow him to come here and work for your company. But the problem is this program is being abused, and it's been abused for a long time. And so when this debate started, you had David Sachs, who is also a Donald Trump ally. He's a big-time supporter of Sri Ram Krishnan, and he takes to Twitter because people were bashing Krishnan and said that he has been a U.S. citizen for a decade. He's not running America like some people on the socials were saying. He is simply advising on AI policy. Sachs says he will have no influence over U.S. immigration policy. These attacks, he says, have become crude and not in the holiday spirit. And Sachs then said, I'm signing off now. Have a Merry Christmas. And so all of this has been going on over the past 24 hours or so. And CNN, man, they were all over it.
Tonight, as President-elect Donald Trump is preparing for a widespread immigration crackdown when he takes office 25 days from now, we're seeing a crack between some of his top advisors and his MAGA base. Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy are both facing major blowback from their own supporters for not only backing, but encouraging offering more visas to highly skilled foreign workers. Over the Christmas holiday, Musk posted this online saying, think of this like a pro sports team. If you want your team to win the championship, you need to recruit top talent wherever they may be.
So part of what Elon is trying to say is that if you are running a company and you've got 1,000 employees, but you need just that one person to roll this out or take charge or whatever, and that person happens to be in India or China or wherever, then you bring that person over with the H-1B visa and everybody wins. Musk called a shortage of excellent engineering talent a fundamentally limiting factor in Silicon Valley in a Wednesday tweet, arguing that immigrant labor is an essential ingredient in American innovation and warning of a dire shortage of extremely talented and motivated engineers in America. And he said, if you force the world's best talent to play for the other side, America will lose. End of story. Now, here's the thing. Many things can be true, and that's what's going on in this story. Because it is true that some of the world's finest engineers and some of the world's finest, coders, whatever, they may live in another country. And they may be a valuable asset to a company here in America. It is also true that the H-1B visa program has been mired in corruption, mired in abuse. And many Americans have lost their jobs because people coming in from other countries will work for less. In one of the previous hours, we were talking to some folks, and a guy called up and he said that he was replaced by a person with one of these H-1B visa programs. And so literally the jobs that people are losing, or the jobs that H-1B visa holders are taking here in America, these are not jobs that Americans can't or won't do. They are literally replacing Americans. And so Elon is partially right. Some of the upper echelon, higher talent, you may need to go to India or some other place perhaps to get someone like that. But that's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is rank-and-file engineers, rank-and-file IT folks. And if you pay an IT person or an engineer who is from this country, $120,000, but you can hire somebody from India for $70,000, and you can do that in mass, well, that's what companies have been doing. And Americans are losing jobs. And so part of what's going on is Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk, they're trying to portray this as, well, American companies, they have to do this because we don't have any qualified people here. Well, then how do you explain the companies that are firing qualified Americans and bringing in people from other countries? Vivek Ramaswamy, people saw that Elon was getting attacked. People saw that David Sachs, he was getting attacked as well. So Ramaswamy, he gets into the fray as well. And as reported by CNN, I don't necessarily know if he helped.
Musk is being backed up by his partner in Trump's government efficiency initiative, Vivek Ramaswamy. He says it's a cultural issue that there aren't more competitive engineers in the U.S. Here's what he said online. A culture that celebrates the prom queen over the math Olympiad champ or the jock over the valedictorian will not produce the best engineers. A culture that venerates Corey from Boy Meets World or Zach and Slater over Screech and Saved by the Bell or Stefan over Steve Urkel and Family Matters will not produce the best engineers.
Well, I mean, there's some truth to that. Vivek says our American culture has venerated or revered mediocrity over excellence for way too long. At least, he says, since the 90s and likely longer. That didn't start in college. It starts young. And I do understand what Vivek is saying. As I said, there is some truth to that. However, it doesn't explain companies replacing current employees with cheaper employees from other countries on the H-1B visa program. Vivek also said most normal American parents look skeptically at those kinds of parents, quote, more normal American kids view those kinds of kids with scorn. If you grow up aspiring to normalcy, normalcy is what you will achieve. And Vivek is basically saying that many American parents look at those other parents who allow their kids to watch hours and hours of cartoons and so forth. Those parents look down on the other parents. Because here in America, we should aspire to be great. And many, many, many American parents do. He says normalcy doesn't cut it in a hyper-competitive global market for technical talent. And if we pretend like it does, we'll have our asses handed to us by China. But again, it still doesn't explain companies firing American workers and bringing in foreign workers. It's like, you know what it is? It's like they're comparing apples and oranges. I would like Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk, both of who I really like. I would like them to explain the abuse of the H-1B visa program. If we can all agree, and I don't know if we can, but if we can all agree that, okay, there might be instances where you do need to go outside for one of the, top 0.1% of people, then okay. But not the rank and file, which is what we're seeing. I mean, it's been proven that the H-1B visa system is being abused. Ramaswamy goes on to say, this can be our Sputnik moment. We've awakened from slumber before, and we can do it again. Trump's election hopefully marks the beginning of a new golden era in America, but only if our culture fully wakes up, a culture that once again prioritizes achievement over normalcy, excellence over mediocrity, nerdiness over conformity, hard work over laziness. Well, Nikki Hailey has now jumped in. This is the headline. Nikki Hailey ripping Ramaswamy. Nothing wrong with American culture. I would disagree with Nikki Hailey. But it's not nearly as blanket as Vivek Ramaswamy seems to think either. You see what I'm saying? It's like there's a lot of people that are just making blanket assumptions about American culture. Because Ramaswamy is right about some people in America. I mean, let's all be honest. There is some truth to what he said. There are a lot of people here in America who, I mean, they know Taylor Swift's latest album or latest song or whatever. But hell, they don't even know who the vice president is. So now Nikki Hailey is going after Vivek Ramaswamy. She says there's nothing wrong with American workers or American culture, Hailey wrote in a post on the social platform X. All you have to do is look at the border and see how many want what we have. We should be investing and prioritizing in Americans, not foreign workers. I absolutely agree with Nikki Hailey on that point. Ramaswamy, who is set to co-chair the Department of Government Efficiency alongside Elon Musk, suggested on Thursday that Silicon Valley hires more foreign-born engineers because American culture has venerated mediocrity over excellence for way too long. Hailey called the tech entrepreneur scum after he brought up her daughter at the third GOP primary debate last November, which, of course, is part of the reason why anything that Ramaswamy says is rather triggering to Nikki Hailey. So I think a lot of people within this argument are partially right, but some are also partially wrong. But nowhere does Nikki Hailey or Vivek Ramaswamy or Elon Musk or Donald Trump, by the way, who also has chimed in on this, none of them have brought up the abuse of the H-1B program or how it is impacting people like us, people like you, people like me, Americans who have been working in a job for a long time, and perhaps they get up to a certain salary, and the company, because, you know, companies have absolutely no loyalty whatsoever, they'll come in and they'll say, well, we can save, you know, $50,000 or $60,000 on this guy's salary. Sure, he's been a loyal employee for 25 years, but who cares? We can bring in some dude from India for, you know, $45,000, $50,000 less, and so it goes. Now, where does Donald Trump stand on all this? I'll tell you coming up next. 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. Dan Mandis in for Gary and Eric. This is Red Eye Radio.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
Red Eye Radio, 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. So back in 2016, Donald Trump not a fan of the H-1B visa program. 2016, March 3rd, Megyn Kelly asked about highly skilled immigration. The H-1B program is neither high-skilled nor immigration. These are temporary foreign workers imported from abroad for the explicit purpose of substituting for American workers at lower pay. He said back in 2016, I remain totally committed to eliminating rampant, widespread H-1B abuse and ending outrageous practices such as those that occurred at Disney in Florida, where Americans were forced to train their foreign replacements. He says, I will end forever the use of the H-1B as a cheap labor program and institute an absolute requirement to hire American workers first for every visa and immigration program, no exceptions. So that was in 2016. Fast forward to 2024, Donald Trump is on the campaign trail, and he was talking to a bunch of folks from big tech. And by the way, real quick, you heard Donald Trump talk about Disney. There was a big story way back in 2016, Disney forcing 250 of its American workers to train the workers who eventually replaced them. It was a horrible story. And so this is now what Donald Trump is saying now, and he was on a podcast or call or something with a bunch of tech entrepreneurs.
And a bigger example is you need a pool of people to work for your companies. You have great companies, and they have to be smart people. Not everybody can be less than smart. You need brilliant people. And we force the brilliant people, the people that graduate from college, the people that are number one in their class from the best colleges, you have to be able to recruit these people.
Yeah, so that is Donald Trump. And again, he was talking to a bunch of entrepreneurs for the tech industry. And a lot of these folks, I think Trump finds himself in a bit of an abnormal position for him, in the sense that he's got all of these tech entrepreneurs on his side. And you know, those tech entrepreneurs, they helped him in the campaign, and now they're helping him pay for the inauguration. And so for the first time in a long time, Donald Trump is loved by the folks in tech. And part of that, perhaps, is because he is now embracing the H-1B visa program, because that is a program that is very much used by the tech industry. And so Trump finds himself in a bit of a sticky wicket now, because he's got basically a lot of the people, millions of people that supported him, and now those folks are seeing Trump sort of turn his back on them as they see it, because he now seems to be supporting an expansion of the H-1B visa program that a lot of his supporters see as replacing American workers for cheap labor. 866-90 Red Eye.
Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios. Now, for Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, here is Dan Mandis.
866-90 Red Eye is the phone number. By the way, before I get to your calls, there are a lot of problems with H-1B visas. I want to make sure that I tell you some of them, because companies are not hiring American workers. There is a massive amount of fraud and abuse. You have some guy from India who wants to come live in America. He is going to work far cheaper than an American. That is just a fact. That's number one. Number two is that people from, whether it's China, whether it's India, wherever, you know, that these folks, they want to come to America because it is a great country. Now, the Department of Labor investigated, and they did find that the lower pay that these companies are paying these H-1B visa recipients, it does suppress wages. So that hurts both the foreign workers and especially U.S. workers. And there is clear evidence that wages are being suppressed, because if you, as an American, if you know that a person from another country will accept 30% less and you really want that job, then you've got to accept the lower pay. That is a suppression of wages. They also found that some of these H-1B visa holders, you know, they lie about their experience and they lie about their education, some. And so they come here and they disappear. We've seen that before. And if you don't think this is actually happening, it is. Apple had to pay, mentioned this earlier, $25 million to settle a lawsuit over hiring foreign workers over American workers. Apple did that, and that was years ago. But this is happening. And so there's, again, a lot of blanket statements that are being made by Vivek Ramaswamy and by Elon Musk and others. And there's a lot of nuance, because there are people, thousands of Americans, if not millions over the years, because this has been going on since the 90s, who have lost their jobs to foreign workers. And so you can't, that's the problem, is you can't sit here and tell me, blanket statement, that there aren't American workers that are willing to do these jobs, because literally there is example after example after example of Americans who have been fired in lieu of a foreign worker who is making less money. But it is also true that companies are having problems finding employees. That is also a fact. So I think part of my problem with this argument that has been going on online on Twitter, X, is that everybody's speaking in blanket statements, and that's not helping anyone. So I can tell you my official talk show host position on this is that the H-1B visa program, it is being abused. American workers are being displaced by foreign workers who will take less money. But it is also true that there are times when the absolute best of the best, if you want to recruit that person, if they are from India or China or wherever, then you do need some sort of a visa to bring that exceptional person in. Which, by the way, there is such a visa. And so if you have an absolute, just top of the line person that you know that you want to bring into your company, and that person can bring something that no one else can offer, well, that's the O1-A visa for people with extraordinary ability or achievement. So there is a mechanism to bring in those super duper talented folks. So there's a lot to this conversation. And by the way, you can be anti-illegal immigration. You can be pro get these people the hell out of our country with a mass deportation. And you can also see the benefit of an H-1B program. So there's a lot to talk about in this, and a lot of you folks want to talk about it. So let's go to the phones and say hello to David calling in Kansas on Red Eye Radio. David, go ahead.
Hi. I heard what you've been saying, and I heard your example a little bit ago about Disney, and I do agree with you that was not right, that they made employees, whether they were American or not. Yeah, train your replacement, and it sounded like you said that they were under the threat. They were under the threat of either being replaced or they wouldn't get their severance.
Yeah, so David, if I may, let me just catch people up. So back in 2016, sure, Disney had 250 people that they let go in favor of these H-1B visa recipients. They told the employees that were being fired that you will not get your severance if you don't train these folks. And so for a couple of months, you had all of these people that were working at Disney, and they had to sit there and train their replacements, and then they were all fired. And if they didn't train the replacements, then they would not be eligible for their severance. They did have, by the way, just to complete the story, they did have a class action lawsuit that was ultimately tossed out by a judge. Go ahead, David.
Well, yeah, I agree with you. I don't think that's right, and I hope that there will be some part of the Trump administration that would keep a tighter eye on that. I think in terms of somebody like an Elon Musk versus whoever was, I don't know if it was the kids or who was in charge of Disney back then, but I think when an Elon Musk, would like to see that happen for some of his workforce or some of his company, he's trying to get the best of the best. And I don't know if that would be Tesla or SpaceX or whatever. I hope that's what he's wanting this for. This gentleman from India does not sound like he's run-of-the-mill Indian guy who just wants to take an American job. It sounds like
he's going to be one of Donald Trump's he's going to be one of Donald Trump's AI advisors. And that's why I say there's multiple talking points here, and a lot of people are speaking in sort of blanket statements when there's actually a lot of nuance. Part of what Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy are saying is that if the best of the best, if there is a dude who is the absolute best AI mind available in the world, you want to be able to recruit that person. But that's different than, bringing in a whole bunch of engineers or coders to come in from India to replace the people that you already have. That's different. Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy are saying, well, we don't want that super duper guy to end up going to China. We need a mechanism to bring that person here. And again, we do. I just explained it. There's another exceptional, they call it, it's a visa it's for exceptional people in other countries. That is different from an H-1B visa. And I appreciate the call, David. Let's see. Let's go down the line. Gary's in Alabama on Red Eye Radio. Hey, Gary, go ahead.
Yes, I wanted to say a few things. I trained as a chemical engineer in material science, and I lost my job because of an H-1B visa recipient. He was not more talented than I was. I got 2 PhDs. I've worked in this field for a long time, and the company is all about money. It has nothing to do with talent. Talent is maybe 5%. These people that are coming, I've been told all my life that a German engineer, of chemical or mechanical engineer, an aeronautical or Indian engineer, Chinese, they're smarter than Americans. That's a bold-faced lie. I beat them like a drum. The reason I lost my job was because it was all about money. And then they wanted to bring me back in some other capacity, but they wanted to pay me less money. I trained them to take my job. Okay, it's happening every single day. So I don't want to hear nobody tell me, like Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk tell me it's about the talent. It's not about – if you pay people a representative salary in America, you can get the talent that you need. That's not a problem. The problem is it's about money. It's abuse. It's a lie. These guys like Elon Musk, he's a good guy. He's a wealthy guy. $200 or $300 billion, but he's got that because he's not being able to having to pay the same amount of money. They're wanting to cut corners. What they want to do is they want to make all the money, and the employee gets beat over the head. That's what it's all about. I don't care what they tell me. It's all in the name of money in America. We have destroyed this country with this principle.
All right, Gary, I appreciate the call very much, and you're right, and I can hear the passion, and that is really sad. And we have been getting a lot of calls from people who have either lost their jobs or not been hired because of the H-1B visa program, including Ernest in Los Angeles. Ernest, thanks for calling in.
Yes. I have a lot to say about what you've been talking about. I don't know what you've been talking about, and I could go on and on and on. But to try to make it short, I've had experience with that H-1B1 visa program people in a major healthcare insurance company here in California. This was in Cerritos, California. Mm-hmm. Now, to give you some background, I am a computer software teacher with the public schools here. I had experience training people to get good-paying computer jobs that basically been wiped out now. Now, it's not only that they're bringing in these foreign workers to take these jobs who are not really have superior qualifications and replace American citizens, but they're also sending their whole IT operation out of the country. Just like when you call for technical support on just about any appliance or especially computers, you're going to talk to somebody in the Philippines.
Well, and Ernest, if I may, what's really sad about this is we've been telling kids, the government has been telling kids for a long time, take STEM classes. And so they do, and now their jobs are being sent overseas or they're being replaced or not hired because of the H-1B visa program.
Yes. Well, it's more than that. It's more pervasive than that. Now, my profession, actually, as a computer software instructor here, has been wiped out because all the jobs are out of the country. So I was working as a security guard in this insurance company, and I saw these positions open. These are entry-level technical support positions here in that company. And they were sending their IT employees over to this particular office where I was stationed and for training. And I saw that all of them were Indonesians. And I talked to the director of that department and was telling about my qualifications. I was applying for this position. I was trying to get a job there. And he was telling me that, in fact, he even admitted it. He said, all of my employees are Indonesians, and the whole computer operation is over in India. The data center is not even in California for the whole company. And I never got that job. After I filed a complaint with the EEOC, they got my security company to transfer me to another post. And then the EEOC reviewed my complaint and said, we don't have any jurisdiction. I was basing it on racial discrimination.
Right.
Which that was. So now for what you tell me about Vivek Ramaswamy is like, I'm just totally against him now. And I question Trump for actually putting him in that position and even listening to this thing about this H-1B1 visa thing, especially for IT work.
Well, and Ernest, I gotta put you on hold because I gotta take a break. But I appreciate the call. Appreciate you sharing your experiences with us. I'm sorry what you went through. Dan Mandis here. This is Red Eye Radio.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
Red Eye Radio, 866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. Dan Mandis in for Gary and Eric. They return after the new year. Coming up, Donald Trump continues to troll Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, saying he wants Canada to become our 51st state. Details straight ahead, Red Eye Radio.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios. For Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, Dan Mandis. This is Red Eye Radio.
866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. You can follow me on the socials, X and Facebook at Dan Mandis Show. It has been really fun to watch Donald Trump as he trolls Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, saying that he wants Canada to become our 51st state. Now, there's a lot going on. Part of what's happening is Justin Trudeau, from a political standpoint, he is in a mess of trouble. He is doing horribly politically in Canada. Even his own party, the Liberal Party in Canada, and I don't know a lot about Canada's politics, but what I do know is that when your own party, the Liberal Party, wants you out, Justin Trudeau, things are not going well. And so part of what is going on with Donald Trump is that he is trying to just pour salt in the wound. He is trying to troll Justin Trudeau. Now, you know that Trudeau, he's always been a critic of Donald Trump. And so now Donald Trump has the last laugh. Donald Trump, according to the Daily Mail, Donald Trump has made his strongest bid yet to take over Canada, offering the Canadian people a 60% tax cut if they agree to join the U.S. and become the 51st U.S. state. He doesn't really mean that. The president-elect has in recent days suggested a territorial expansion into Canada, Greenland, and Panama, and has mocked Prime Minister Justin Trudeau by calling him governor. On Christmas, Trump escalated his campaigns against the governments of both Panama and Canada as well. Also to Governor Justin Trudeau of Canada, whose citizens, this is what Trump said on socials, and to Governor Justin Trudeau of Canada, whose citizens' taxes are far too high, but if Canada was to become our 51st state, their taxes would be cut by more than 60%. Their businesses would immediately double in size, and they would be militarily protected like no other country anywhere in the world. So the best part of all of this is Canadians are like, oh, yeah, sign us up. I was on vacation. I was talking to a guy from Canada, and he was telling me about how much they love Donald Trump and how much he hates Justin Trudeau. Now, I do understand that in Canada, and like in all countries, you have different political parties. But let's be honest. I mean, people hate Justin Trudeau in Canada, even his own party. Why that guy is still in office, I have no idea. But he's offering Canada and Canadian citizens a 60% tax cut. And so Canadians are like, eh? As in, yes, please, let's talk about this. They say Trump recently posted that Canadians want Canada to become our 51st state and offered an image of himself superimposed on a mountaintop surveying surrounding territory next to a Canadian flag. Trudeau has suggested that Donald Trump was joking about annexing his country, but the pair met recently at Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort in Florida to discuss Donald Trump's threats to impose a 25% tariff on all Canadian goods. He's also, by the way, Donald Trump also suggesting Wayne Gretzky for governor of Canada. Now, here's the deal. I think part of what Donald Trump is doing is he is enjoying being a troll. Let's be honest. And nobody trolls better than Donald Trump. Not only does he not want Justin Trudeau to be the Prime Minister of Canada, because he wants a conservative in there, somebody he's more simpatico with. But if somehow he can convince Canada to become our 51st state, he wants Wayne Gretzky to be the governor. Kevin O'Leary. Now, you know that he's Canadian. And if you don't know who Kevin O'Leary is, he is a big-time investor. You see him all the time on the various networks. Fox News, CNN, I think, as well. But he's a billionaire. He's a media guy, does a lot of TV. He's part of that show, Shark Tank. But he's Canadian. And he was like, oh, yeah, I absolutely love this.
There's 41 million Canadians, basically the population of California, sitting on the world's largest amounts of all resources, including the most important, energy and water. Canadians, over the holidays, the last 2 days, have been talking about this. They want to hear more. And so, you know, there's obviously a lot of issues, more details, but what this could be is the beginning of an economic union. Think about the power of combining the two economies, erasing the border between Canada and the United States, and putting all that resource up to the northern borders where China and Russia are knocking on the door. So secure that, give a common currency, figure out taxes across the board, get everything trading both ways, create a new, almost EU-like passport. I like this idea, and at least half of Canadians are interested. The problem is the government's collapsing in Canada right now. Nobody wants Trudeau to negotiate this deal. I don't want him doing it for me, so I'm going to go to Mar-a-Lago. I'll start the narrative. The 41 million Canadians, I think most of them would trust me on this deal.
So, And by the way, Kevin O'Leary also not a fan of Justin Trudeau. Now, remember the backdrop here, and we've talked about all this. Donald Trump has been threatening a 25% tariff on Canadian goods unless they help us with the border, because there's been a lot of would-be terrorists that have been caught or have come over our northern border. So there's a couple of things going on. There is the discussion of tariffs. There is the discussion of security as well. And there's also all of those resources that obviously Donald Trump would love to get his hands on. And so the trolling of Justin Trudeau, it does continue. Trump is actually putting pressure on the government of Canada because they've lost faith in the prime minister. Trump has actually said in interviews that he's tired of subsidizing Canada. Remember this conversation?
We're subsidizing Canada to the tune of over $100 billion a year. We're subsidizing Mexico for almost $300 billion. We shouldn't be subsidizing. Why are we subsidizing these countries? If we're going to subsidize them, let them become a state. We're subsidizing Mexico, and we're subsidizing Canada, and we're subsidizing many countries all over the world. And all I want to do is I want to have a level, fast, but fair playing field.
So Trump has an issue with Canada. And as far as I can tell, there's a lot of, what's the right word? There's some disagreement over whether or not we were actually subsidizing Canada. We aren't actually giving Canada, as far as I can tell, any actual foreign aid. What we do have is a trade imbalance with Canada. They export more into our country than we export into theirs. I've seen, as far as the trade deficit, as high as, $53 billion. Now, I don't know. I don't know how bad the trade deficit is because I keep seeing these different numbers that are out there. But realize, for Trump, it's just about the art of negotiation. It's about the art of the deal. He wants to negotiate a better deal for America. And he also wants the damn border closed. And I love that. And again, Trudeau, the backdrop of all of this is that he is facing calls to resign from his own party. He's liberal, and he has made an absolute train wreck of the budget. High cost of living there in Canada, rising inflation. Basically, Justin Trudeau is Canada's version of Joe Biden for us. Although Trudeau can kind of sort of put two sentences together, Joe Biden can't. But Trump is negotiating, and he's simply trolling Trudeau. And he is negotiating in the media and on the socials because that gives him the upper hand. Now, the process as far as Canada, because I don't think anybody believes that Canada is actually going to be our 51st state. Now, could we come up with, as Kevin O'Leary was saying, could we come up with a really good trade agreement or economic agreement, somehow our two economies working better together? That could be negotiated, absolutely. But to actually become our 51st state, Canada would have to have a constitutional amendment. They'd probably need a referendum as well. Here in America, it would have to go through Congress too. Now, my opinion, we already have enough of our own problems, right? We don't need Canada's problems. We have our own debt, which is around $36 trillion. We don't need that. We have massive amounts of illegal aliens to deport. We don't need to deal with Canada's problems. We have a Republican Party that, I'm sorry, friends, I'm a conservative, but our own Republican Party, somewhat of a train wreck right now in the House of Representatives. We have a speaker fight that is looming. They can't seem to agree on a budget or spending. That's a big problem, too. And we have several of our own states trying to thwart Donald Trump's policies as well. So we don't need Canada's problems. And I don't believe that that's what Donald Trump actually wants. I think that what Donald Trump actually wants is he wants a better trade deal with Canada, and he wants our two economies perhaps to work better together. And what can we accomplish? So there's a lot to this conversation, but no, Canada is not going to become our 51st state. The phone number is 866-90 Red Eye, 866-907-3339. Earlier in the broadcast, I was talking about the battle over H-1B visas, and a lot of people commenting on that. Let's say hello to John, who is in Los Angeles on Red Eye Radio. John, thanks for calling in. Go ahead.
Oh, hi, Dan. Good morning.
Morning.
I'm so awesome you're giving this topic so much attention. That I've never, I had hoped this was going to be discussed, and now it is, and it's great. And, like you say, it's very nuanced. Many things are nuanced. And so what I never hear discussed is, the H-1B visa program is a lottery system. So it's all randomly, people are chosen at random. And so the people coming here, I should give a little background. I'm an engineer. I've been laid off 6 times from my job. I've had to train my Indian replacements. Oh. I've done that 3 times. And I'm living this experience. So sorry if I get a little animated here, but it really is.
John, John, hold, if you don't mind me asking, so you're an engineer. What kind of an engineer are you?
Software developer. So, software development.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
So the other part of that is, well, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Do you have another question?
No. I can't imagine. I can't imagine the embarrassment and the humiliation of having some dude from India come in and you have to train your replacement. And it's happened to you how many times? 6?
3. I've been let go, laid off, fired, whatever you want to call it, at least 7 times in my career. The last 3 times, as you get older, I kind of aged into the career, and then that's when the H-1B visa program really got started. And so the last 3 jobs I've had, it's a repeat, you are told you need to either leave or you can train your replacement and we'll pay you for that.
Yeah.
But that's happened the last 3 times on my last 3 jobs. And so here I am, 60-some years old. I can't get back into this industry. It's too old. I'm too old. I don't fit in culture-wise and all that stuff. And the program, it makes it almost difficult. It makes it impossible to get, to really establish yourself back in that industry.
John, do you know if I may, John, do you know how much less were they paid than you were being paid?
Well, I never figured that out because I never talked about salaries with with my replacements. But I think Ernest mentioned, it's one of your previous callers said that it's all about the money. It is. I believe it is about the money as well. But a lot of it's just, I want to bring up a couple points. Well, I think I brought up the fact that it's a lottery system. So we're not bringing the best people here. We're not. If we were, it would be merit-based, but it's not. Right. It's lottery. Right. You put your name in the bucket, and you come over to this country, and I've seen the quality of the people that come here. They're not the best quality, right? They're not the superior workers. I mean, and so the other point I wanted to try to get into quickly, I don't want to ramble, but there's a good faith recruitment policy, which companies they're supposed to abide by to make sure that they don't, that they advertise the position to make sure there's no other American worker that they can find to fill the job.
Yeah.
Well, like you said, this is all mired in abuse. That's not okay. That's what they establish that, but that's not what companies do. There's seminars on YouTube that help companies figure out how to go through the hoops to circumvent that, right? So they don't. Yeah, I've been on many interviews where I can tell they're not interested in hiring me. In fact, they're taking phone calls. I'm trying to interview. They're taking phone calls, and right in the middle of my interview, it's really out of control. It is worse.
And John, I got to run, but your story really touches home for me because I know what you're going through. It's just incredibly sad, and I can't imagine how frustrating it is and how humiliating it is as well. But you bring up a great point, and it's a story not lost on the folks listening, and good luck to you, John. 866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. Dan Mandis here. This is Red Eye Radio.
Brought to you by Hot Shot Secret.
Hi, I'm Jen Loomis, a transport safety expert at J.J. Keller, and I'm here to share a tip on compliance, safety, accountability. Compliance, Safety, Accountability, or CSA, is the FMCSA Safety, Compliance, and Enforcement Program. Its goal is to hold motor carriers and drivers accountable for highway safety and to reduce crashes, injuries, and fatalities on our roads. CSA does this by assessing the safety performance of motor carriers and drivers based on data collected during roadside inspections, crash reports, and FMCSA investigations. Based on the data that is compiled, motor carriers are assigned a score. The carrier is then grouped with other carriers who have had a similar number of safety events. Carrier scores within the group are then ranked to determine intervention priority. Low scores are better, so carriers with the highest scores are those that are most likely to be targeted for intervention by the FMCSA. Interventions range in severity and may include warning letters, roadside, off-site, or on-site inspections, civil penalties, or operation out-of-service orders. This tip was brought to you by J.J. Keller and Associates. Visit us at jjkeller.com.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
Red Eye Radio, 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. Dan Mandis here in for Gary and Eric. They return after the first of the year. One of the big news stories of 2024 is the absolute implosion of the Democrat Party. I loved what Scott Jennings had to say. He was on CNN, and I love how he describes the Democrats.
Democrats are the party of uncommon nonsense. Republicans are the party of common sense. It's why our tent right now is full of such a wide ideological spectrum. People are flocking to the Republicans because we stand for common sense.
Yeah.
And Democrats have taken on all this uncommon fringe nonsense. And if they are in the toilet, my advice, flush away the fringe and the people who have drug you down there, because this is why Republicans won the election.
I mean, listen, I love what Scott Jennings says. And he's on CNN, the mouthpiece for the Democrat Party. Secondary, really, because MSNBC is number one. But here's what's interesting. As Scott Jennings is on CNN, everybody knows that the ratings for CNN, they have gone down big time. Coming up, you're not going to believe what insiders, employees at CNN are saying about what they need to do to fix the ratings issue. Details straight ahead.
Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios. Now, for Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, here is Dan Mandis.
866-90-RED-EYE is a phone number, 866-907-3339. So why is CNN failing? I think there's a number of reasons. Number one is they're posing as a news station when clearly they're not. But this is from the Daily Mail. CNN journalists offer a brutal assessment of why their network is failing. I'm going to spare you the suspense. Do you know what they're saying? There's reporters inside CNN that are actually saying that they're not going hard enough against Donald Trump. And that's why their ratings are failing. That's what they're saying. Has nothing to do, I would say to CNN, it has nothing to do with the fact that you've completely lost your credibility. It has nothing to do with the fact that for how long during the entire campaign You talked about how Donald Trump and his policy was akin to Hitler. You called Donald Trump's supporters Nazis. And I think that you lost all credibility. That's what happened. Y'all kept talking about how Donald Trump and his policy was, what was it? Project 2025, I think that's what it was called. When Donald Trump said over and over again, that is not my policy. And you lied about his policies on abortion. You said you said CNN, you reported, and your contributors reported that Donald Trump was going to support a federal ban on abortion when he specifically said no. He was done. He sent it back to the states where it belonged. And so I believe the problem with CNN isn't that they're not going hard enough against Donald Trump. It's that people know what you are. People know that you lied. And because you lied, and because people know that you lied, they now don't want to watch you. There's also a big thing going on right now where a lot of folks are just turning off the news. Just turning off the news because they're just done. They call it news fatigue. And I thought this was interesting. And then I'll get to your calls. Americans are exhausted by political news. TV ratings and a new AP poll show that people are indeed tuning out. This is from yesterday. As a Democrat who immersed himself in political news during the presidential campaign, Zayed Anullah has much in common with many Americans. Since the election, he's tuned out. They say people are mentally exhausted. Everyone knows what is coming, and we're just taking some time off. CNN, MSNBC, networks. But you know who's still doing pretty good? Fox News. Conservatives are fired up, absolutely fired up. At Fox News, a favorite news network for Trump fans, the post-election average of 2.68 million viewers is up 13%. You know why? Because I truly believe that Fox News is fair and balanced. Now, some of you folks can laugh at that, but I really do. That's number one. But number two, at least Fox is, by and large, I mean, they're honest about who they are and what they do. And if they've got a problem with Donald Trump, they'll say it. Talk radio, by and large, and certainly on this show with Gary and Eric, if they've got a problem, and because I'm a big time listener to this show, Gary and Eric, if they've got a problem with Donald Trump, I mean, they'll say it. Same thing with Fox News. That builds credibility. CNN, MSNBC, they have zero credibility, like none whatsoever. Fox News has a lot of credibility. And I think people are just excited about Donald Trump. And I think they're excited about what's next. And maybe the folks at CNN, maybe they're just sad because their person lost. Kamala Harris lost. Joe Biden lost. But I think for the majority of the American people, I think that they figured out now what exactly CNN is. And it is basically peddling narratives. And so now CNN is trying to become more newsworthy, but as it becomes more news-oriented or news-driven, as opposed to more opinion-driven, I think people are just tuning out because they just don't trust CNN one way or another. You see, when you lose credibility, my friends, when you lose credibility, when you lie to the American people over and over and over again, and when you demonize roughly one half of the American people, then they tend to tune away. I think that's why Fox News is doing so well. Because there's a lot of new Donald Trump supporters that are out there. And so they've decided that they're going to go to a different channel, and obviously that channel perhaps is Fox News. MSNBC, of course, remember that Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski, they went off to, they say, Mar-a-Lago to kiss the ring of Donald Trump, and that destroyed their credibility. But here's the thing. When you deal with the truth, then you don't have to kiss anybody's ring. The only ring you're kissing is the truth. And MSNBC and Joe and Mika, they're not about the truth. They were about just being anti-Trump. And part of the problem that a lot of these folks have is they've been anti-Trump for so long, and the rest of America just kind of moved on from that whole thing. I mean, yeah, you still have some of these folks that are incredibly anti-Donald Trump. But you know what? Like the air quote, ladies on The View, the Joy Reids, the Rachel Maddows, you know, those types of people, that ilk, if you will, I just say to heck with them. Because if that's the way that they're going to continue to behave by demonizing Donald Trump supporters, well, then they're going to do what they're going to do. And they do that at their own peril. Because the more that they act the way that they act, the better the midterm elections will be, and the better the 2028 presidential campaign will be. Because words mean things. Words do mean things. And when you use the words that are so incredibly vitriolic, like you did, CNN, MSNBC, Joy Reid, ladies on The View, and so forth, then what you're doing is you are destroying your own credibility, and you're building the credibility of channels like Fox News and people like Joe Rogan, talk show hosts across the country. So you keep doing you, CNN, MSNBC, and The View, and the rest of us will continue to cover the truth. Because I think that that's what people want. People simply want the truth. I mean, it's not that hard. I mean, I'm a knucklehead talk show host in Nashville, Tennessee. I figured that out years ago. Greg is in Chicago on Red Eye Radio. Greg, go ahead. Thanks for calling in.
Hi, how you doing today, Dan?
I'm good. Thanks for calling in.
I want to touch on this H-1B visa thing.
Yes.
Let me just say it's a nuanced problem, because you don't have a bullpen here, because our lower education system has been devastated and destroyed. But let's look at the macro level, Ernest and John's level that called in. Very, very good callers, excellent callers. Here's a problem. When you bring people in to work at a company and they live overseas or remote, let's look at Ernest's issue specifically. What you have here is a completely unjust system of employment. Because why? Because you have something called wage and environmental parity disorder or disunion. People are working overseas. Their costs of living are nowhere near what our costs of living are. Their healthcare costs are nowhere near what our healthcare costs are. Mm-hmm. They are paying much less, if anything. I don't know what the system is. All I know is that it's basically completely perverted against the American worker.
Well, and Greg, if I may, also don't forget, Greg, that they want to come to America. If you're living in India, you are willing to take a healthy pay cut to come to America. You know that you're not going to be making as much as the American workers were, but you're probably going to be making more than you were in India, and you get to live in America.
Well, that's assuming that you'll get all the benefits. That's assuming you'll get the benefits and the health care too, which I'm assuming you will. Let's assume they do, right? Okay, here's the other problem, and I know this from a perspective. I'm not going to mention where I work, but we've been through a system here for the last decade and a half, maybe 2 decades, of contract workers. We used to employ a system where you would get contract workers in with a talent pool and a set of skills that was outside ours, but would be able to assimilate to us and us to them because they were here for more than a one-year basis, right? Mm-hmm. What they did is they shared their knowledge with us, and it was quite a very good experience. The organization made out in spades. But what happens? What happens is when you get onto this gravy train, and that's what I'll call it, is a gravy train, they'll eventually find a way to do this rotational system where every year the contract comes up and it comes down. And you have to get people that rotate in your projects and rotate out of your projects. And if your company or your organization has zero vision and can't look forward into the future and look on the margins, your company is going to be saddled with some software that's a lot older and not moving into the 21st century. And then your older skill set that knows that is going away. Yeah. And now you have an unholy reliance on new people coming in that really don't know the older product, but are getting moved in because older people are retiring, they're sick and tired of what's going on, and things like that.
Or they're getting downsized or replaced by these other workers.
Right, but they're not of the same experience. In a lot of cases, standards slip. And that's just the truth of it. Yep. Our companies are complicit in this. They know better. I don't know if there are laws against companies that let's say, discriminate against Ernest and Johns of the world, right. But it's wholly unmoral and unethical, and there is no reason why you can't bring people in to help and help train the people that you have. And there's John's 63 years old. You know, I'm getting close to that age too. That doesn't mean you're put out to pasture. And I'm not implying that he feels he should be. There's a lot of talent left in a lot of people with a lot of experience, and that's worth something. The other problem here is that let's go back to everything else, Dan. Where does the problem lie? Too many rules on the books, a horrible, horrible Congress that won't take up the meaningful issues and tackle them head on. This is an issue Donald Trump has to take head on. There should be a way to bring talented people into the system, but there should be also a way to utilize those people in the system to help train and help the talent pool of the current employees grow. There's nothing wrong with sharing knowledge. Absolutely, it's a growing experience. And that's
right. And Greg, I'll say this, and Greg, I really appreciate the call. Here's what I would say, because you're right on many points. Somebody called in earlier, and it was a great idea. Because the problem is, and for you folks that missed the calls from earlier that Greg was talking about, is that we have workers that are being replaced by foreign workers. The foreign workers are being brought in for less money, and so these companies are with the H-1B visa program, and I've been covering this extensively all night. Is that these workers are coming in and they're making less than the American workers, and so it's it's just intuitive in these companies. Well, hey, let's save $30,000-$40,000 per employee by bringing somebody in from India, and we can fire the American workers. And Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk and some other folks, it was a big problem, and I don't want to redo the entire topic again, but it was a big fight on social media here over the last, 10, 15 hours or so. And it really erupted into a conversation over H-1B visas and how American workers are being iced out because of what is going on with these visa programs. It's terrible. We'll return next on Red Eye Radio.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
Is the phone number 866-907-3339. Dan Mandis in for Gary and Eric. This is Red Eye Radio.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.